we joined. We lived at 1136 North 6th Avenue East. And my wife Denise and I at the time decided we wanted to join a church before we had children. And so we did. We wanted to put our roots down. Being Air Force brats, we didn't have that. It was important to us. And so we joined Peace Church. We used to walk to church in the morning, so it was fun.
And what has Peace Church meant to you through all these years?
A lot of community. You know, we raised our family here. We had 3 kids that were raised in the church, and we religiously attended. It was 2 couple rules. We ate meals together, and we went to church on Sunday. And I don't care how late the kids were out, they got woke up and sent to church. So we always came as a family.
And how about some of the friendships you developed here?
Oh my goodness. Well, we still have those friendships. Matter of fact, there was a time when we had moved to Texas for 7 years. There was no reason really to come back to Duluth, except for our friendships. So.
What about some of the friends who are no longer with us? Some of your memories?
Well, actually, probably the biggest privilege I had at church was the opportunity. There were so many of the old members, and that we met. It was, a different church. Just it so enriched our life. So many of these people and the stories and getting involved in people's lives. It was a smaller church then, so. Everybody had to pitch in. We did a lot of things, a lot of work. Good way to meet people is drying dishes, or with a shovel or paintbrush in hand. So.
And how about some of those earlier years in your membership, when you were depending on everybody to pitch in?
We had a lot more enthusiasm than money, and so. I think that we formed a lot of good friendships over the year. So,
what are some of the different roles you played?
Oh my goodness! Well, actually, and anybody can remember back from a few years would remember we had Trudy Schwartz was the gatekeeper, and Trudy was so good at recruiting you. Matter of fact. Ed Pretz and I got recruited to teach 4th grade Sunday school because the boys in the class were driving the teacher, which was Linda Lundberg at the time, was expecting her first child. So we got sent down. We got recruited by Trudy to bail her out and to calm the kids down. I hate to mention this, but I think a couple of them were Ed and my kids. So we got sent down so it started, and taught Sunday school for a number of years. Was also in those days, if I was head of the building and grounds, what that meant was if you needed a door, that was your donation, because there just wasn't the money or the budget that we have now. So it was a different time. Was on the church council, made good friends on the church council. I just can't tell you how fortunate it was. We used to give people to ride to church from out in Hermantown. Mary Martin, who was a long-term member here, Mary used to ride with us. And then there were a couple of the neighborhood girls that their moms belonged to the church, and we used to give them a ride. We'd pick up Mary, and then we'd go pick up the girls. This Megan Thompson, who's now Megan Youngren, cuts my hair, what's left of it. She owns her own, but we've been, I've been friends with them for over 25 years now. She's a mom, so it's a full circle.
Tell us a little bit about your role on the building committee.
Well, we used to fix, and it wasn't just a building committee. Anytime that we needed to do something here, there were men in the church that, like, if we went to put outlets in, we had this Fred Hendrickson was electrician, and he'd make us come in and do it. But I know one of my first projects, we had bell issues. Anybody who's been up on the tower, this was pre-painting days. But Ed Nelson built a platform for me, and I used to have to climb up the solenoid. The ringer inside the main bell was bad, and we took that in and got it fixed. But I worked with this Ed Pretz, still a good friend, and Ed was scared. Anything over 3 feet, he started to get dizzy. So, and then Ed Nelson was my ground crew, and so yeah, it was I was a little younger. I was younger then, but heights never really bothered me. But so we worked on a lot of things. That was, the parking lot before the blacktop was gravel, and every time it rained, there's water all over. So that was, you'd get a call to arms and we'd shoot over. And it was a lot easier when I lived, 3 or 4 blocks away. But we still come in. We used to come in from Twig, and when we lived out in the country, and spent a lot of time here.
Tell us your story about Harold Paschke and coming into...
Oh, well, that was a standing joke. And again, Harold's kind of... The church owes a lot to Harold, but they lived out on Nichols Lake. We lived out by Caribou Lake. And I can tell you, more than one time, several times, we would come into church on Sunday and we'd be turned around. The church parking lot wasn't parked. They canceled church. And of course, we never got the message, but we always laughed because we always could come to church. And I think that was something else too, that in the old days, back then, you had pretty regular attendance at church. It just happened, a smaller group.
Any other memories about Harold and his role in the church?
Oh, well, it's not things we like to talk about, but the church financially wasn't on good footings. And now these are unsubstantiated stories, but one time I had heard he used to pay all the bills. He was the church treasurer, and we were tight. Money was so tight and the cash flow was tight. He'd send like the electric bill to the gas company and the gas bill to the electric company. Of course, they'd send it back. Oh, made a mistake, put the wrong check in. Because in the meantime, the Sunday cash would come. And actually, I believe on many occasions, he kept this church afloat, personally kept this church afloat, kept the doors open, as the church, was growing. You look back and in those, we were all young couples. We're all starting our career. I was an apprentice. We weren't, but it was important. If you guys, if you knew Denise, we weren't exactly peas in a pod, but we agreed on some things, and church was one of them. So,
if you could, describe a word or two about Peace Church. When you think about Peace Church, what comes to your mind?
Well, community, and again, we made long-term, lasting friendships here in church, and quite frankly, that's why we're here. Why we came back to Duluth. None of my children live here. My parents we're not from Duluth originally. I don't have any relatives here, nor does my wife. But we could have relocated by family or next to children, but we came back in 2007. We moved back. We spent 7 years in Texas. Not something I would recommend to any of our members. But that was a major reason we moved back and we stayed. And, I don't know that my children will ever live here, but this will always be their home. So that's where their roots are.
And I remember Denise has played such a big part. She had played such a big part in Peace Church in so many roles, too.
Well, she enjoyed that. She actually taught Sunday school too, and so it's fun. I taught for a number of years. We used to teach. A matter of fact, I think I pretty much stuck with like 4th grade. I did have the junior high youth one year, and I don't think I was invited back. They were very kind about it, but my secret to Sunday school is always bring donuts and orange juice. They can't cause trouble if they're eating.
Well, are there any other little stories you'd like to share with us, or?
No, it's been an important part of my life and my family's life. You think about it. So, the kids were baptized here. At least 2 of them went through confirmation here, they are all three married by Kathy, which is special. And my wife was married here. I'll tell the story, but as a young dad, I was just so lucky that we had so many people here to look up to as mentors. And I loved Bill Cadle. I worked at Minnesota Power. I was a young apprentice, went to a job, and when Bill Cadle worked there, came right up to me, grabbed my hand, bounced me up and down off the ceiling. If you knew Bill, you wouldn't be surprised by that. The other thing was we had a lot of the early church picnics, and I can remember out at Nichols Lake. Again, we had big church picnics, and again, friends out there. I remember Joan and Al Peterson. Alan had this big house, and then Joan told us, he said, he's going to paint one side every year. He's going to do a side. She goes, he's got a sprayer if you want to borrow it, because it's not going to get used that much, but we had, and then, do you remember the time we camped over in Wisconsin? What was that fall? No, that falls. What's the big waterfall? I just remember Paul Francois was a member here. He organized that. He put his mattress from home on the top of his car and drove over. He had a bad back. Same thing, we camped out. We did a lot of campouts. We camped out up at Ely, the all-church camping, and also over at the park over at Jay Cook. We had it, and I remember at the time we had a camper, and I drug it over, and we camped there.
And then we had some picnics at our house, do you remember?
Oh, and I have a lot of nice pictures. I have pictures that's when Kathy she was just young.
Exactly.
The other one, not having family in town, we had Thanksgiving at different church members. We had like Kathy and Tim up before they had children, but we were invited to other members. We would have that. I can remember going to Cindy McCauley's one year for people were pretty tight. It was a tight group.
Yeah.
And I remember the women, I know that they all talk about the ugly wallpaper they tore out of the nursery, but I can vividly remember the day that went in. It was a beautiful spring day. The women all went back there. They were going to make it beautiful. But yeah, 40 years, you have a lot of stories. And I remember camping with up in the Boundary Waters with Dick and Ed and Tom Heisted, and it rained the whole time we didn't have hot food for and it was like, if I never come back here, it'll be too soon. But yeah, a lot of stories, a lot of good people.